Hey all, this is Scartop, also known in World 16 as Slippery Slope. Wanted to go ahead and try to give you guys a tutorial on how to build a science city in Ways of History. Um, the reason this came up is I think folks are a bit intimidated sometimes with trying to figure out what makes a good science city and what is the best way to go about it and start building one. The good news is it follows a relatively cookie cutter template um, where the things you want to focus on are A, science, and B, generating enough population to cover all of the science buildings. So um, just let's just start off with what's a good spot to put a science building. So you can see here on the map, um, a good science building doesn't necessarily have a resource nearby because we're not going to be a production country. So although we see that this could get fish, uh, we're not going to go for that. We're all the food and all the resources this country is going to need is going to come from your other cities, or you're coming from the market based on the gold you're going to be generating. So, the first thing that I would look for when it comes to a good science city is can you build science area improvements around it? We're at the point in the game here where you can see that we have research water areas and campuses. And we're about to unlock campus level 3, so we'll see these flasks go up to 3 as we go through, as we advance. Um, One other area to consider is now this is built on some uh, grassland here, but if you could actually find as you go through, you might be able to see a better spot. Spots that are built on hills, and the reason why, if you could build your city on hills, I mean, this is probably an okay spot. You could generate 5 AIs here for science, and then subsequently one for culture. But by building on a hill, you can actually have more than one observatory. So on a regular plains tile, you can only build one observatory, where if building on a hill, we'll be able to generate a second observatory. Some key spots that are really good for building science cities, although the grass is really good, only I mean because there's a lot of flat land. I'd recommend also looking towards the desert. The desert has less resources, natural resources, and boom, I just opened it up, and you can see here right off the bat, here is a potential spot for a city where you could build, not is it 8 full AIs all around it and level them up max. I know for a fact we do have one that's actually opened up from a player that has since stopped playing. You can see here this is a grand spot where they have all the AIs fully maxed out, and you can go ahead and plop that city right in there. But the key thing is the AIs as you go through, because it's going to be there's only a limited amount of science buildings you could produce, so the AIs are going to be critical for taking you over the top. So I spent a lot of time already speaking about the AIs, but the reason why we do talk about them, that's the fundamental start of your city. So when you first start a city, you probably are looking to like, oh, it's a science city. Let me start building science buildings. That's probably a trap. That's the trap that a lot of people will fall into. Really, what we should start by building off is going to be your supplies or your depots. And the reason why you want to start with that is they generate your workers. So you could go ahead. I would recommend putting a couple points into your depot or your storage, and then start working your way through some population building. So like aqueducts. This we really had a lucky part here of being on the water. You could build water intakes. It generates a lot of population growth for very little space requirements. And the reason why we're going to build these off the bat versus science is because these science buildings are going to reduce your population. growth. So when you just look at this here, we can see that as they max out, you're losing 47.9 population per day. And that's going to limit the amount of growth you can do. And the thing is, once you have your building set up, you don't really want to get rid of population just to build new AIs. So by building your depot first, you could go ahead and start generating workers. And then once you have those workers, you want to start building your area improvements. So, and it doesn't really matter which ones you go through first. Whatever's available to it. Because the thing is, you're going to take care. You should be taking care of all of your area improvements first before you even build your research, your science buildings. So once you go ahead and have those area improvements done, the next thing I would say is you start building your culture. And the reason why you start building that is you want to start getting that population up. Before you start knocking down your people per day, you want to go ahead and get as many people in there as possible. So this is where you start building your cathedrals, your theaters, your museums. And that way you can start building out that total population. And then once you have that number up, you can then start focusing on your science cities. I'm sorry, your science buildings. All right. As far as when building once you have those cultural buildings done and complete, I like to start with the observatory merely because it has the highest efficiency of all of the science buildings. You can see here it's an 80% labor efficiency. And then secondly, I followed up with laboratory, again at an 80%. And then lastly here, up to the universities. Early on, I usually start with academies and then I level them, two of them equally. And then as I get to around level 9 or 10, I try to upgrade them to universities, one right after the other. It's a large influx of resources. However, it minimizes the downtime for that. And just so you also know, I mean, key things from a research perspective, you're going to need books. As you also level up your laboratories, you will need fuel, you'll need sulfur. That's critical in building the buildings. You will need books so you could consume them. It gives you a large hit. I think it's 15%. Yes, you can see here. And then lastly, your culture items. It's good once you start bringing in the money because from the country, you'll be able to afford some of these streams to go ahead and start pulling in these culture items. And then once you get those supply streams going here, you can constantly grow them. As you get closer to the max, you can chip those off to your neighboring cities or sell it back for a little bit, recovering of money. And that's in a nutshell. So you can see here, relatively mid-game, pushing population is 7,400. We still have bits to go here, so we're about to unlock campus level 3. And then after that, we'll be, and you can see here as I'm building more workers, we'll be ready for that as it comes up. So, hope this helps. Again, if you have questions, feel free to leave comments in the below. And hope this helps you build the first science city or multiple more to come. So, thanks everybody.